Welcome to All Things Seniors, a podcast for caregivers. If you are a caregiver or someone who is looking to learn about challenges and solutions pertaining to seniors, you are at the right place. We created this podcast to support all caregivers so that while you are driving, cooking, or working out, you can listen to those episodes from this podcast which pertains to your needs the most. In each episode, we will have an industry expert who will share their wisdom and knowledge with you to help you better serve your loved ones. So let's dive right into All Things Seniors.
Hello, and welcome to All Things Seniors. Did you know that in North America, we North Americans have a predictable housing life cycle? So there are three distinct phases. Number one, we are in university, we are doing a part-time job, we want to live closer to the downtown, we want to live in the urban centers, we are living in a small place with roommates, trying to save as much as we can. First phase of our life. Then we get married. We are looking for a bigger space so that our kids can have a backyard or dog can go out. So now the phase two starts where you're looking for a family home. That goes on for another 30 years until when the kids grow up. And when the kids grow up and move out, the empty nesters are now looking to downsize, which brings them to the third phase of their life. Phase one, phase two, phase three. Phase three has a lot of stresses. And today, we are so blessed that we have Jeff Brown, who has more than 15 years of experience in real estate, and he deals with older adults and seniors all the time in helping them downsize. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ravik.
Tell me, let's say now you're working with a family and a family has finally decided that, okay, all right, sure, let's downsize. There is a team there who can help them, but they still have to make a decision of whether they're going to a smaller home or they are going to a condominium. I want your thoughts for our listeners because most of our listeners are those family caregivers. And this is the first time they are helping their mom or dad to make that decision. The listeners here are looking for your input as to if they make a decision with their mom or dad's support to move from a larger house to a smaller house. What are the pros and cons? And if they move from a larger house to a condominium, what are the pros and cons? I see most people discussing condominiums at this point. When they are thinking downsizing, they're thinking condominium. So if you don't mind starting with condominium, tell us what are the pros and cons of moving in a condominium for an older couple?
Well, if it's a smaller house, it's kind of easy, but there's a shortage of smaller houses, bungalow, ranch-style, single-family dwellings here in Canada. So you're right. A lot of people are going towards this condo, this easy lifestyle where the snow is going to be shoveled and the grass is going to be mowed, and there's not much to worry about. But in actuality, there's a lot to worry about with condos here in Canada. The supply and demand is skewed. They are building condos in every city, everywhere. They're building them 20 stories high. And they're taking old apartment blocks and they're converting those into condominiums as well. So the supply is abundant. Now, the demand is not necessarily what they thought it might be, because my dad, as an example, he loves bottling wine, and there's no place to do that in a 700 square foot place. But I'll tell you, when you're looking for a condo, you've got to be very, very careful.
Why do you say that? What are the things people should look for? Let's say mom and dad says, hey, I see my friends living there. There's a good community hall. There's a small gym there. I want to live there. I want to live in a smaller space where I don't have to worry too much about snow shoveling. That has its own perk. From the sounds of it, that's the pro of living in a condo. What are the cons? Tell us a little bit more what the listeners should be looking for before making the decision of moving mom or dad with their help to a condominium building.
Well, there's a couple things, Rafiq. The first thing I want everyone to be mindful of is there's a condo or HOA, homeowners association, or strata fee that you have to pay every month, regardless if you pay the condo off or not. That never goes away. And that fee, it does a couple things. You're right. It handles the landscaping and the snow removal, usually the management, the parking, the water. But most of all, it kicks up to what's called the reserve fund or HOA fund. That's a massive pool of money that's used in case something goes wrong. But let me tell you, there's a lot of things that are consistently going wrong.
For example, what? Like what could go wrong for which you think the reserve fund could not be sufficient? Like, for example, let's say based on what you just advised to the listeners, there is somebody who is listening to this. Now they go back and say, hey, mom, you're looking at this condominium. Let me look at the documents first. Let me see how much reserve fund they have. And he finds out that, oh, wow, that's awesome. That's $2 million of reserve fund. They should be comfortable or not? Or what could go wrong which $2 million can't cover? Like, what's that?
Well, when you're talking about these major structures, there can be failures in roofs and windows and doors, pool liners and equipment, parking lots, parkades have sunk. There's been some major things that have gone wrong that cost way more than $2 million. So if you were to buy a home, they say get a home inspection. If you were to buy a condo, for sure, I would inspect those documents like crazy. I would take them to a lawyer. I would take them to the SRES agent and make sure that everyone knows and feels comfortable with exactly what they're getting into.
So it's a good point. Like, if I'm buying a home, I get a home inspection done. I get a report that my home is structurally balanced. My roof is correct. Can we get a condominium inspected as well? Like, can my inspector go to the roof and see if the roof is right, or they only have to rely upon some documents? What if the documents say everything is good, but actually the roof needs repair? How do you fix that problem?
Well, money fixes that problem. So you can get a condominium inspected. Sometimes on a skyscraper, they might not want you or somebody on the roof, but it's going to be out of the scope of expertise to a regular home inspector. What you want to do is really focus back on the condominium documents. And what they're going to provide you is an idea of how much money they've got, how much money there will be, and how much money should be spent over the next, say, 5 years.
So am I getting it right that although the ideal thing is you would want to get that inspected, that's not cost effective? So people end up relying on those documents, and sometimes documents are not the fair reflection of the actual condition of the building. And that's where the problem may occur. And the reserve fund now may not be able to suffice that upcoming problem. Is that what the message is here?
Yes, that's the message. So the reserve fund can only grow by one of two ways. One is called a special assessment, which is everyone gets a big bill that some may or may not be able to afford, or raising the condominium fee, which again, seniors on a fixed income, if they're expecting a $300 a month bill and that goes to $600, that can be life-changing. That could be devastating.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that the condo board is run correctly, okay? The people that are on this board, they don't necessarily have to be highly trained or educated. And a lot of times they want to keep that reserve fund as low as possible because that benefits them with a low condo fee for now, and they're not forward thinking. So an SRES has the knowledge and tools to make sure that the future is also going to be bright for these seniors that think they're buying something that they might not be.
This is very important information, Jeff. Thank you for sharing that. So it is important to know, like for the listeners, that if you are helping your parents in making that decision whether they need to move to a condominium, look for those documents. Look, what's the current condominium fee? What could be the potential increase in condominium fee depending upon upcoming major expenses? And if mom or dad still makes the decision of moving into the condominium, yes, absolutely. It's their right to make that decision. They just need to be aware of the fact that things can change. They should not move to a condominium by saying, wow, $100 condominium fees, that's my only expense for the rest of my life. No, things may change, and they just need to be aware about it so that they don't got off guard. Does it make sense, Jeff?
Absolutely. But Rafiq, I also want you to know that in a case of a major special assessment, maybe no one can afford it. And then what? And that's when you're driving by and all of a sudden there's 40 or 50 units for sale in a building. That can be a major problem that can really negatively affect somebody's financial status.
Wow, that is so true, because many people in Canada, when they buy a home for many, many, many years, they pay those mortgages. And once they have all fully paid it off, it becomes their asset. They downsize, they use that asset's value to, for example, buy a condominium. And if the condominium price goes down, they have potentially now lost their whole life's worth of saving.
And that's why I'm not a big fan of condos, to be honest. I think you've got to be really careful when you're looking at condos. When I meet a client for the first time, I say, what about aging in place? What about the home that you're already in? Could we install an elevator? Could we install grab bars? could we hire a local kid or a professional company to do that landscaping, snow removal, and make life easier where they're currently living? Now, if that's not an option, sometimes an apartment can be the way to go.
That's awesome, Jeff. I really appreciate your insight. And I hope that all the listeners, they will take a lot from this interview today, because I personally feel that many of the caregivers, they did not sign up or applied for this job. All of a sudden, one day, they became the family caregivers, right?
Yeah.
And they never took a formal training as to how I should have this conversation with mom regarding downsizing. Like, this is something which now you have to learn as you go. And I think a lot of information that you share today will help them make those caregiving role and help their family. It will make their journey easier. So thank you very much for that. So listeners, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to it. This way you never miss an episode. Also check out our show notes, where whatever Jeff said today in terms of the information that we can find on internet, we will put those show notes links there so that it's easier for you to find those information. Also, we have some behind the scene pictures that we have put on our Facebook page, All Things Seniors, so you can get that. Thanks, Jeff. Again, I really appreciate it, you coming in here today.
My pleasure. Great to be here, Rafiq.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, you all. I'm your host, Rafiq Punjani, and we'll be back next week. Until then, ciao.